Common sense ain't that common anymore. Seems common sense is past tense, just like the dinosaur. Political correctness has got a lot to answer for, 'cause common sense ain't that common anymore.
Now on weekends, the Treasury of Common Sense.
You're one of the finest voices in the land. How are you, Leith Van Onselen? G'day.
Yeah, g'day, Joe. How about yourself?
All right, welcome back. Nice to have you back on the show again.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Always nice.
As we head into a new year, you start to realise that, there are other problems in Australia, and they are far greater than just social cohesion. And here are some of them right now. We have the power issue, which today and all around this country will be a fixation, because people will be saying, am I going to lose power? It's a hot day. How amazing we have got ourselves to this.
It is, especially given that we should be, an energy superpower. So, we are obviously the biggest coal exporter in the world. We're the second biggest natural gas exporter in the world. We've got nearly a third of the world's uranium. You'd think we'd have, very reliable and cheap energy. But unfortunately, through government incompetence, we don't. And that's a sad reality.
Yeah. I'm just looking as we speak. The solar's kicking in. So, for example, in New South Wales, not too bad. Our availability of locally generated power is going okay. But that'll change. That'll change as the sun moves across the sky, and the emphasis on solar will shift, and we'll go back to our baseline supplies, which means we'll be asking Victoria and Queensland to bail us out yet again.
That's right, yeah. And unfortunately, obviously, if you have some bushfire haze, whatever, like we've got down here, that obviously blocks out the sun, which impedes solar. But the overriding problem we've got is we're building these solar and wind turbines everywhere, and obviously it only works when the sun shines and the wind blows. So the capacity factor on solar is about 25%, which means that, if you install a certain nameplate, you only get about a quarter of that, because obviously the sun only shines for a certain period of time. You get cloudy days, whatever. And then for winds, are similar, because wind, the capacity factor is a tiny bit higher, but basically what it means is that it only works when the wind blows, and we don't know when that's going to be. So you can't really base an energy system on these intermittent, supplies that are based on the weather. You've got to base it on dispatchable power, stuff that you can actually control that is weather independent. And unfortunately, we've got this delusion in Australia in that, despite the fact that we sell all the stuff that powers that dispatchable power, like coal and gas, we sell oodles of it to the rest of the world. We're trying to deny that to ourselves in the name of this net zero fast. So to me, it just doesn't make any sense.
Just before Christmas, just as the nation was in a wave of shock about what had just occurred and the inaction and bad action from the people who are meant to be leading us, weirdly, out of nowhere, Chris Bowen stands up and announces a gas reservation policy for the East Coast. Now, normally that would be great news. However, it appears it's not quite as originally claimed.
No, it's not. Unfortunately, it's basically Clayton's reservation policy. It's the reservation policy you have when it's basically a pretend policy, right? So gas reservation is something that the East Coast should have had for decades. Now, just to put it into perspective, East Coast Australia is the only gas exporting jurisdiction in the world that does not have any gas reservation. And just think about that for a second. It's ridiculous. So, about 15 years ago, the former Rudd-Gillard Labor government was considering whether or not to allow exports out of Gladstone in Queensland and to open that up. And while they're in that process, they decided, as they handed those approvals to the gas cartel to start sucking up our gas and selling it, they did that without any proviso that they need to sell to Australians first and supply the domestic market first. And as a result, those gas export terminals came online in 2015 because they took years to build. And ever since that, we've basically created a shortage on the East Coast of gas, despite the fact that we export nearly 3/4 of the gas, mostly to China, which is just crazy when you think about it. Western Australia has a reservation policy. They've had one since, I think, 2004. Us on the East Coast, we decided not to copy it for whatever reason. And as a result, we pay exorbitant gas prices, and we have constant gas shortages here on the East Coast. Now, the Albanese government, under heaps of pressure, finally decided to release a gas reservation policy, but it's totally inadequate and it's going to do absolutely minimal to alleviate the situation. The reason for that is that it's only going to apply to new gas projects from 2027. So basically, we've got to wait, a year or so before it comes in because they're going to do a whole bunch of industry, consultation, and then we've got to wait for projects to be built before these projects will, potentially channel 15 to 25% of their gas to the domestic market. Now, that means we're not going to get any relief for years because this policy is not retrospective on existing projects, and we have to wait till about 2030 before the current export contracts on the existing projects roll off. So realistically, we're not going to get any relief under this policy for probably about 5 years, which is just insane. And all the Albanese government need to do was copy the coalition's reservation policy that they took to the last federal election, which basically was going to stop the gas cartel from selling uncontracted gas overseas. Because at the moment, they sell a whole bunch of uncontracted gas overseas. It's called spot gas, rather than selling it to us domestically. Now, this is gas that is not under contract, which means that there is no sovereign risk. There isn't any problem of Australia breaking contracts or anything because these contracts don't exist. But we've got the gas cartel is effectively selling off this uncontracted gas rather than selling it domestically, and it's driving shortages. And the coalition's policy taken the last election was to basically place export levies on that uncontracted gas to force it into the domestic market. Jeez. And really, if Labor was serious with this reservation policy, it is. If Labor was serious, they simply would have copied the coalition's policy alongside their requirement for new projects to have gas reservation, and that would have solved the problem.
I just think, just in case people don't kind of get the gravity of what we're talking about, in Western Australia, and you'll know the number, Western Australia reserves a portion of the gas that comes out, and we'll call it 100%, a portion of that is set aside to be sold at a really good price to the people of Western Australia, which actually means Western Australia has quite good electricity prices. WA, though, is not on the national grid because it's too far. So in New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, even Tassie, we have a grid that runs and we share power and we sell it to each other out of generators. And the gas that we sell here is the same price as the gas we sell to the Chinese and the Japanese and whatever, even though it comes out of the backyard. It's crazy.
Pretty accurate summary there. So Western Australia has a 15% gas reservation requirement on all gas in WA through ridiculous policy error. And, I'm not sure why we did it. But
is it cock-up or conspiracy that we don't have it on the East Coast?
I was about to say the other C word, corruption, but I don't want to go that far. But
Really?
but there is, I can't understand why the government would approve these export terminals, more than a decade ago without any requirement to sell to Australians first.
Because even though big companies extract it and it's very expensive to extract it, it's our gas, like it's Australia's gas, and the minerals belong to the individual states. So
yeah, that's it.
The state, like coal, can tax it and do things to it. So the state could actually be making money out of it, good money.
Yeah, and that is part of the problem. So WA is obviously a single massive state. Whereas on the East Coast we've got a whole bunch of states, and the gas is exported out of Queensland, right? So you have to get there is a bit of a problem in that you'd have to get some sort of agreement between the three states and et cetera, which does make reservation a bit harder. But even so, the former Rudd-Gillard government should not have approved these projects without a reservation requirement, and now it's trying to sort of unscramble the egg with this policy, but it's totally inadequate because it's only going to apply to new projects from 2027. So we've got to basically wait for these new projects to be built before we start getting a bit of extra supply into the domestic market, or we have to wait for the existing contracts, which don't expire until 2030, to start rolling off before we get any relief. So it's really, we cannot wait another 5 years for this because gas is incredibly important for two reasons. First of all, it's used directly in industry, in manufacturing, as a direct input. And if you drive the price of gas up, you then end up with massive manufacturing closures. And we've seen that with Oceanic Glass, Australia's last architectural glass maker. They left because of high energy costs. Quenos, our last plastics maker, they shut up shop because of high gas prices. a whole bunch of other manufacturers left because energy costs are too high. But also, gas is also one of the key marginal price setters in the electricity market, because every time we don't have enough wind and solar, the backstop is gas, because it's going to be turned on very quickly.
Yep.
And if you have high gas prices, well, then it also means your electricity price goes up. Now, it certainly isn't the only driver. The shutting down coal-fired generation, which is stable and cheap, is also pretty stupid, which is another thing that we do, even though despite the fact that we sell about 7 times more coal to the rest of the world than we use ourselves, we've also decided to shut that down as well. So, look, we are run by absolute energy clowns in this country. And despite the fact that we, as I said, we export 4 times more gas than we use, export about 7 times more coal than we use, we've decided that we can't use this stuff ourselves, and we've decided to make it very expensive. And this is why we suffer from expensive energy costs. And this is just moronic stuff. And unfortunately, we could solve all these problems, but the governments we have in Australia have zero inclination to, and they just want to dig deeper holes by leaning harder into this net zero rubbish, which the rest of the world, well, many countries in the rest of the world is now abandoning.
You mentioned, it is crazy, you mentioned energy clowns. I mean, the king of the clowns is Bowen. I cannot now even listen to him. I have to wait for someone to analyse what he's had to say, because it's kind of like want to punch the TV. It's that, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that expression. He's just such a frustratingly arrogant, incompetent fool of a man, and we have to sit there knowing he's pulling all these levers that are doing this and that to people's lives. And even on a day like this with extreme heat, we cannot really count on the energy grid, and we have got people who are going to be frightened to switch the air conditioner on because they're worried about their bill. I mean, this is the vandal of the highest proportion. And then I think to myself, okay, I can't stand listening to him. Most people now can't. The media, there's too many dimwits in it that don't really get the engineering or economic ramifications of the things he's doing, and they report just the headline, which is how he's managed to get away this sort of thing, that we've got this East Coast gas reserve policy like there really is one. I just wonder at what stage, someone is going to have to jump in here, an almost national emergency, and fix it.
Yeah, and we probably won't get to that point until everyone's bills start rocketing. So,
or blackouts.
Blackouts as well, yeah, blackouts and also bills. So despite the fact that our energy bills have gone up a fair bit in the last couple of years, like quite a lot, most of the pain hasn't been felt yet, because we've got a whole bunch of, tens of billions of dollars worth of transmission projects going on around Australia at the moment for this, for these renewables. And they require heaps of transmission, which is super expensive, because they're so dispersed. They're got wind and solar projects scattered all around the country, and they're trying to basically, mesh them together with this massive network of transmission wires, etc. That stuff costs tens of billions of dollars. And the problem with it is, once those projects are built, and they're under construction now, they haven't been finished, they then get added into the regulatory asset base, which then power companies are allowed to recover through our bills once it's added to the regulatory asset base. Now, we're in a situation whereby these projects have not been added yet. And once they're finished and they are added to the regulatory asset base, the regulator will then allow power companies to then claim it back through our bills, and that's when the rubber's really going to hit the road, and our bills are going to rocket, and we're going to be forced to pay a hell of a lot more for electricity. And we haven't hit that point yet. And this is why I keep saying that, Australians supposedly support net zero and all this sort of thing. The problem is the support is a centimetre, deep. Well, sorry, I should say it's a centimetre deep and a mile wide, right?
Yes, right. Yeah.
But once the bills start having to be paid, and once the costs start rocketing, even more so than they have already, well, I'm sure that support's going to evaporate, because really Australia should be, we should be trying to aim for the most stable and low-cost energy system as we can.
Of course, we have an advantage here. We grow the stuff in the backyard that other nations have to import, and those other nations, they take advantage of our stupidity in order to have a successful and prosperous manufacturing economy, and we've got empty factories in Australia. It's crazy stuff.
It is, and it's completely hypocritical when we then sell that same stuff that we're not allowing ourselves to use ourselves to Asia, etc., to burn instead of us.
It's got me.
Because net, the climate is a global issue, right? So if you're worried about that, well then Surely,
Yeah.
if we're going to sell 7 or 8 times more coal to the rest of the world, including China and India, which just burn it, willy-nilly, what difference would it make if we sold a little bit less and we used more of it ourselves, but gave ourselves cheap and reliable electricity? Same with gas. It'd make a lot more sense, and we'd have a much
frankly,
more stable and balanced economy.
I trust our standards of enforcement of the environment here more than I trust the Chinese or other nations. Australia cares about it, and Australian scientists and our regulatory authorities are pretty ferocious on it, and we're not big on pollution in this country. We do our very best to ensure that if it's there, it's minimalised and controlled. Other joints just pump the crap into the sea and let it go into the sky. They don't give a damn. I mean, I reckon I've never seen a skyline like I saw in Beijing at around the time of the Olympic Games over there. I've never seen a place so filthy. And they said it was clean. So, when it comes down to it, who do you want burning the coal? Do you want them burning it? Because it goes into the atmosphere as well if it's over there. I would rather us be burning it and taking advantage of it. But, well, mate, you and I know this. It's this ever frustrating thing. One day there will be trials and these people will sit in a dock. It's the only conclusion you can hope for. Nice to talk to you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Jason. Anytime.
And Happy New Year. Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks, mate.
That's Leith Van Onselen. I want to play the Common Sense song. We got it, the outro song, because that is, I actually think that's the best part of the show. We turn it up in our house when it comes on. We love the Kevin Bloody Wilson Common Sense. Ain't that common anymore. That's the song. The national anthem.
Seems common sense is past tense, just like the dinosaur.
That's true.
Political correctness has got a lot to answer for, because common sense ain't that common anymore.
Now on weekends.
It's good, isn't it? It's great. This is 2GB.